Now, you're going to love this one. Earlier this week, Scottish citizens headed to the polls to vote on whether the country should regain its independence from Great Britain. British broadcaster Sky News airing this gem of a performance by David Cameron, all to a Taylor Swift song.
We should be clear that if Scotland walks away, we are never, ever, ever getting back together. We are never, ever, ever getting back together. No, you don't talk to your friends, talk to my friends, talk to me. But believe me, we are never, ever, ever, ever getting back together. Like ever.
Now, just over at Rhodes University is the 18th Annual Highway Africa Conference, and the theme this year, social media, from the margins to the mainstream. A special report now from the university's journalism department.
Heavyweights from the media industry descended upon Grahamstown, South Africa for the 18th Annual Highway Africa Conference. The Rhodes School of Journalism hosted over 500 delegates from 36 countries, mostly from Africa. The two-day event covered the theme, Social Media, from the margins to the mainstream.
Highway Africa is a fantastic conference. We've been coming for a while. It was the first conference that really integrated bloggers and non-traditional journalists in the main conference format. This was 6-7 years ago, and and since then we've always felt welcome. It sets the agenda for Africa for years to come. You get a very influential group of people in one room at one time.
Dan Gilmore, this year's keynote speaker, believes that smaller communities should move away from large social media platforms and create their own online structures to push for social change.
If you're not paying for it, as the saying goes, you are the product being sold.
I don't think journalists should fear the opening up of the media from a journalistic sense. They're not the sole gatekeepers anymore, but instead of pretending that we're oracles, why don't we be guides?
The social media actually brings in the people who were formerly called the audience as active producers of content. And in Africa, this is quite key. It is key at the level of accountability, talking back to people in power and holding them to account for their electoral promises.
You're getting more Zimbabweans online, and they're discussing issues, and they're, stressing out and having their anger articulated online. We've had elections, we've had all sorts of offline activities, and those haven't necessarily changed the situation. So will social media necessarily do that? I don't think so. There have to be other reforms within the offline world that facilitate change.
Many traditional journalists, probably most, have an allergic reaction when I say you have to be an activist. They say that's not my job. But every journalist is an activist on freedom of expression.
I think we still need to unpack what journalism is in this new media age, and who is a journalist, and what do they have to stand by or stand for.
While the business of talking about media happens in the plenary sessions and workshops during the day, networking takes precedence at night. The sponsored dinners pave the way for connections to be made that will create conversations long after the Highway Africa banners are taken down.
So we bring together annually the leading thinkers in the field of journalism and media to come and debate and share where the trends are going.
Jenna Lilly and Julia Fish for Mags on Media in Grahamstown.
And finally this week, let's examine a concept called integrated employee engagement, where staff members, through clever internal campaigns, are inspired to do their very best. That has obvious long-term brand benefit. We sat down this week with Blue Moon's Michelle Caldeira, whose agency is celebrating 25 years in the business. So, Michelle, Blue Moon has been producing adult content for pornographic movies for about 25 years now.
Yeah.
How's the business?
That's absolutely perfect. Do you know that we were often, when the kind of like email thing first started,
yes, people actually...
we were blocked from many corporate clients.
Because they actually thought that?
Because they thought Blue Moon was a porno site.
Okay, but that's
but
not...
we do produce adult content.
But that's not where we're starting the interview. This whole thing, Michelle, about employee engagement, I think often it's maybe seen as the lost cousin of brand building. First of all, in its simplest form, what is employee engagement?
It's both the emotional and rational connection to the brand. So you need to be able to get employees to connect to you. So first of all, you've got to attract them, and then you've got to get them to remain within that organization in that connected state.
Okay, so at its heart, employee engagement is you will be building the brand within an organization, or you will be building a concept within the organization to assist the brand in its development. What typically would an agency like this do?
You can't divorce the brand at any point. Anyone who does a divorce of the brand would be silly in terms of employee engagement, because you see it, employee engagement, through a lens, and that lens has got many kind of filters, and the one filter being brand. The other side of that is the employee value proposition, and then there's the employee life cycle. So you've got certain points of connection that you would then impact an employee, but if it's not seen through that lens of the brand, you really are going to fail, because you've got to make an absolute connection between what is felt by a customer externally with that brand and what is experienced with them there when they impact, when they actually connect with an employee on the internal. So it has to be one and the same.
And typically, where is the disconnect in that respect? Because often brand goes in one direction, employee understanding of the brand, employee engagement with that brand is going in a completely different direction.
People who get it right are those people where brand collaborates with HR and internal communication. So when we have had clients that they've had all three disciplines work together, then we've got an unbelievable success. When we've got brand going on their own without having HR reflecting brand in the EVP, we have that disconnect.
How do you strategize around this? Where's the starting point?
We do a deep dive into the content of the client, and that is the landscape of their strategy. So we need to be able to create points of connection for an employee to that vision. And you know, often clients make things quite vast for employees, where there's purpose, mission, vision. So we try and create the simplest connection points for people. So you can pull it down to values. So if we say we behave with integrity, what does integrity truly mean? And we pull it through into behaviors all the way through that employee life cycle, creating this language between those two areas. And then once we've got that in place, you then look at that employee life cycle. So you look at attraction and recruitment. So for example, if you are saying that our brand is fabulously dynamic externally, internally, when you're recruiting people, you better say the same thing. And guess what? On day one, when they arrive to work for you at ENCA, for example, if you don't have a desk ready for them, or you don't have a computer, boy oh boy, you've broken that employee promise on day one.
I could talk to you about parking bays as well, but that's an entirely different program, isn't it? It really is. All right, what about the visible aspect of this, the visuality of it? How should this manifest itself?
Well, it really needs to be beautifully aligned to the brand, because you don't want to have awful posters all over the place. And one of the favorite places of communication is the tacky loo door, which really inappropriate.
Isn't that amazing?
Inappropriate.
Go to any organization, there it is, and no one's looking.
And no one's looking. You have to find the areas that are going to impact on people, and some of the surprising areas. So you do an audit through the employee's daily cycle. So from the minute that they drive in, what do they see? As they kind of go into the main areas, and you actually walk through a day through several levels of employees to understand what impacts on them. And that's how you plan it.
How long should a campaign last in order to embed what you're trying to do? And secondly, how do you measure its success?
The program is behavioral. It's not a quick change and saying, nah, Jeremy, behave with integrity. Absolutely not. It's 18 months before you start getting the first behavioral change through.
And the measurability is at the end of a process like this, what should have changed within an organization?
So there's several points of measurability. You can do the kind of epic once a year research surveys where, you know, some of our organizations, 14,000 people tested in a year, or you can do the monthly kind of dipstick. But you're asking questions such as, do you feel recognized by your leader? And when last were you recognized? And when last did you recognize someone? And you know, sometimes when we've got multiple brands, one of the interesting things to test is, who do you work for? And that answer gives you quite a bit, whether they suggest one of the subsidiaries or whether it's the mother brand.
Can you just very quickly pull all of this together into maybe one case study, something that you've worked on, which has really resonated and which has had the kind of results that you've pointed to?
Something that for me was a highlight was a tricky organisation, Eskom, who are not necessarily given the greatest support internally, externally. And they actually won the most desired company to work for in the Sunday Times brands last year. And that was underneath our watch. But what was really great about it was that that's a hard place to be working, because Eskom gets a lot of criticism externally, but their employees do an incredible job internally. And people don't recognise the passion that people apply to working internally at Eskom and connecting to that vision, ensuring that they keep the lights on for South Africa.
Now, for more on our featured stories, you can go to our Facebook page. You can also find us on Twitter. Next week on the programme, all the excitement from Cape Town Creative Week, as well as the 2014 Lurie Awards. Goodbye to you, and thank you for watching.